Have you guys heard about PhoneScope? PhoneScope is a privately held company that makes custom-molded, precisely engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Photographing wildlife has never been easier. Take digiscoping photos and videos from your smartphone and share them with your friends. PhoneScope stands behind their product with a 100% money-back guarantee. PhoneScope is the future of digiscoping. Get yours now. Use the JScott16 promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases. Check them out at PhoneScope, that's PhoneSkope.com, or on Instagram at PhoneScope. Wilderness Athlete is committed to improving the health and quality of life for the outdoor athlete by providing field-tested, scientifically validated nutrition and sports performance products. Check them out at wildernessathlete.com and use the JScott promo code to receive 10% off any order. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Chris Rowe of Rowe Hunting Resources, and we're going to be talking about setup tactics for spring turkey hunting. And Chris and I have already covered pretty extensively scouting and roosting birds and all the different situations that play into roosting birds and how to roost birds and where to find them and what have you. Today we're going to be talking about setups. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right, my friend. How are you been?
Good. I'm excited today to talk about turkey hunting and talking about these setups. And when I think of setups, I think of kind of three scenarios. I think of the early morning roost, that situation where you've made a plan from the night before and you are going to, probably make an hour's worth of a setup, and then you've got kind of your mid-morning, say like your 8 o'clock, if I were to pick a time like 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock kind of mid-morning run and gun, midday run and gun. And then, midday could also be sets, just a nice, good spot to be setting, and maybe a strut zone or a meadow or something like that. And then I've got, late afternoon into evening, which then, filters its way into, late afternoon, late evening, or evening setups. And then the whole process starts over again as you progress into that evening setup. You're now roosting birds, trying to roost birds for the next morning, and you start it all over again. So it's going to be fun here to talk with you about this. You ready to roll?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a good separation. That's kind of how I lump things too. So no, I think that makes sense.
Okay, so let's dive into the early morning roost situation. And I want to talk about a few things first, go over our outline here. And like we've talked before in a couple of these other episodes is, in my opinion, even if you know exactly where you're going for that early morning roost situation, I always want to be early, because I can always take a nap during midday. And people that know me know that I do take a power nap during midday. It's huge. But I get up super early, and I like to be there in my roost setup super early. And I do that for several reasons. One is, if for some reason I get to my spot and on the way there, if I'm not, out camping and walking from my camp, if I'm traveling in a vehicle and I have vehicle breakdown or I have a flat tire or something like that, if I'm way early, I can handle a lot of situations. Or I get to my spot and there's a truck parked exactly where I want to go. Or I've had it before where guys roll in the night before at 10:30 at night when I'm already asleep, and they picked right where I was going to park my truck to camp.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adjust, and I think if you don't get up, usually my alarm goes off at 3 o'clock, and I'm usually always on the move by 3:30, no later than 3:30. And obviously as the season progresses, it gets light earlier. So when I get into May and I'm down there hunting ghouls, a lot of times I'm getting up way, way early because, they're, for us in Arizona and what I've found, in these southwestern states, about 4:30, I don't know what it is about 4:30, but 4:30 is when birds start gobbling. And so I need to be in position way prior to 4:30 because I need to get into my spot, get set down, get all settled in, and then let the morning unfold. So 3 o'clock is usually always the wake-up time. As I get closer into May, I usually wake up at 2:50, and then I'm trying to be out the door at 3:15, out of my camp, rolling to my spot. Now, obviously, if I have an hour drive to where I have a bird roosted, sometimes I got to get up earlier.
Well, and the other thing, too, is like we talked about we did talk about it in a previous episode, moonlight. I mean, in moonlight, if you got a full moon or a bright moon in the early morning, especially just after a full moon, those early morning hours, that moon is still up, and it's bright.
And I'll even say that the moon is bright, and a lot of times on those situations, if you get up early enough, you can actually walk in a full moon, or
Yep.
a bright moon, get settled in, but then the moon tends to drop below the horizon, and there's usually always like a 30 or 40-minute gap there where it gets kind of dark again,
Sure.
and then all of a sudden it gets light. Well, you've used the moon, we're talking sometimes, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm actually walking in because I'm able to walk right to where I need to be. Most of the time, they're not going to be awake and not going to see you when it's that early, but you can see plain as day. You get set up, and maybe even you tilt your head against the tree, and you might fall asleep for 30 minutes again. I've done that where I walk in with the moonlight, then you get that 30 minutes of kind of dark phase, and all of a sudden, a bird gobbles and wakes me up, and I'm probably over there snoring too.
Yeah, and I've taken, doing some of the stuff I do out here in Kansas with, youth hunts and taking folks hunting. There's been times where, maybe their hunt is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day deal. They come in Thursday evening. They've rolled in at say 8 or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, or they left work on Thursday and they get out here and it's 11 o'clock at night and they're beat tired. And I'm like, okay, you guys ready to go in the morning? Yeah. Do you want to go help me set a blind? And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm headed out the door now. It's 11 p.m. because the moon just came up and I can see. I'm going to use that moonlight. We're going to go out, set the blind, get decoys, whether we get decoys set or staged, doesn't matter, but I'm going to use that moonlight to get out there in the middle of the night when those birds are just rock steady asleep. And then I can back out and we can hit the ground running in the morning. But yeah, take advantage of the moonlight. But I think, like we said before, just be careful, because if you're out there in the morning and you're farting around too close to the roost and that moonlight or the moon is up, they can still see you.
Yeah, and I want to mention something too, and I haven't actually done this, but I believe that you could, with a very bright light, I believe that in the middle of the night, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, just dead asleep, I'm pretty sure that you could, with a flashlight, walk your way with your flashlight, your bright, let's say, super high lumens, bright light, walk and go right up and right under a roost tree and then shine the light up on the bird. And my bet is there's a good chance they might not even lift their head out from under their wing. I have never tried it. I've never done it, but I'm betting you could do that.
I think you might be able to get away with it if you're quiet.
If you're quiet, right. So
I would.
Yeah.
I would say, I don't know if I might test that out on one of my personal hunts. I don't know if I'd test that out with a client, but.
Well, I'm just trying to make the point that at the right time,
Yes.
you could probably drive right up to a bird that's roosted and get out, and they still are going to be roosted right above you. Of course, they're probably going to wake up then, but turkeys will allow you to get right underneath them as long as you do it. You could do it in the dark, and I have, not on purpose, but I've actually snuck into the roosts before, or a roost setup, and literally had hens in the tree that I have my back to. And I've been able to creep in there, not knowing the hens are in the tree, but the gobblers, 40, 50 yards, 60 yards, and all of a sudden it's getting gray, and I've been dead still, and everything's settled down. They finally woke up. Well, they're woke up, and they're in my. I'm right below them. Yeah. They're yelping and doing their tree calls in my tree that I'm leaning up against.
Yeah, the big thing is if you didn't wake them up, and I think that's key, because we did talk about earlier, if you do too much stuff around the roost, or if you bump them on the roost and they see you and they know that you're there, a lot of times, especially in the mornings, they'll pitch out. I mean, they might gobble, they might carry on and do whatever they want, but they'll pitch out and go the other way. I think what you're talking about here, and I agree, and I utilize it myself, is I will use the moonlight, but I am super stealthy, quiet. I picked up a couple new Primos double bowl blinds this year, and unfortunately, it's still the double wide blind. I still think it's by far the best blind ever made, but unfortunately, they've made some changes that they've used some different materials, and those materials, I'm sorry, are loud. And I'm like, dang it, because now I know right off the bat, I will not be able to use those brand new ones, those two particular blinds. I will not be able to use those under a roost on a basically where I'm going to slip in, set the blind up, and then hunt. There's just no way. They're going to be too loud setting up, and the birds are going to wake up. Whereas my other ones, oh yeah, those babies are so broken in and so soft and so quiet that I could just slip right in there, and they'll never have an inkling in the world. And then, of course, if you're just sitting against the tree, like you're talking about with your butt against the tree, oh yeah, no, they'd never know.
Yeah, you definitely want to get close in the morning, but you definitely want, if a bird hears you, whether it be a hen or a gobbler, the gig's up. They may not blow out of the tree in the dark, and most likely they won't. They will stay tight. And in essence, I've never done it. Obviously, I don't advocate it, but I think it could be done where you could walk in, if you knew where the bird was roosted, I think you could literally, in the dark, walk in and shine the light up in a tree, and I think you could blast a turkey right out of the tree if you knew exactly where they were. Obviously, we would never do that. We don't advocate that, but they will stay put in that tree if it's dark. Yes, I think there would be a time when they will blow out and fly away in the dark, but I think they're probably likely to hold tight and not blow out. But as soon as it gets halfway, gray light, they could just blow out and fly the other way.
Yeah.
I guess my point in saying that is their defense mechanism is being in that tree. So they're not going to fly out in the dark, and you hear people say, well, I hope they're in the same tree. Well, 99.9% of the time, the birds are where you left them. So if you roosted them the night before, unless a bobcat has crawled up in that tree with them and blown them out, and even if they did blow them out, I would argue that the turkeys are not roosted very far away in another tree, because they don't fly around at night. They don't have night vision that, they can fly around, and it's just their safety mechanism is in the tree.
Well, and I know I have blown birds out in the dark, getting too close to them, but most of the time, those birds were already awake. So in my opinion, basically, they were up there half asleep, half awake, whatever, and they heard me coming. They heard me get too close, and they had time to go, I don't feel right, I'm out. And most of that has been sound and me being way, way too close to them. Again, when we're talking about on a mountainside, I might be rocking a ridge, and they're roosted. Well, the tree they're roosted in, the base of that tree might be, 80 yards down the hill or 60 yards down the hill, but the treetops,
they're 10 yards.
They're not that far away. And so all of a sudden I popped up or I walked over and boom, they're like, oh my God, it's right there. And boom, they react, but they're going to, So I guess we're rambling, but I use the darkness all the time, and I will use whatever limited ambient light at night all the time to get myself in position. And yes, you want to be as close as you can possibly get most of the time for those morning sets.
Yeah, and so in the morning, no lights, be quiet, be patient. I say get within 100 yards or closer of the roosted bird if you can. Let the birds call first. Let them get to gobbling. First, what usually happens, what I've witnessed is early, the first thing you hear might be just a gobble, a random gobble at like 4:30 in the morning. And then you might not hear anything for a while, and then you'll hear just real soft, tree yelping and tree talk. And then as things progress, then all of a sudden, as it's getting gray light, then you'll get birds to gobble. But do you have birds just random, boom, a bird gobbles, and then maybe you don't hear him for another 30 minutes, and then you hear hens, and then all of a sudden he chimes back in? Do you get that every once in a while?
Oh, yeah. Especially if you have a bright moon. Yep, he'll be up, he'll be awake. He'll just be sitting there milling around, and I guarantee there's probably other birds in there awake too. But yep, I've absolutely been out there, like you said, 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, go. You're like, what in the world are you doing? Go back to sleep.
Yeah, and I have pulled up in areas before where, like, I may pull up to my spot at 3:30, and I'm getting my decoys and getting everything out of my truck, and I'm getting ready to go walk down the ridge where I've planned, okay, I want to be in position at, say, 4 o'clock. And as I'm walking, all of a sudden, and I'm thinking,
what in the world?
What are you doing? Exactly. How am I going to sneak in there now when you guys are awake? And then if you're hearing that, you might have to make a different plan because now your birds are awake.
Yeah. At least he is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I always say, in my opinion, I don't want to call to the birds on the limb too early. I would rather let the bird gobble. I would rather let the hens start talking. And what I'm doing is I'm evaluating what situation do I have. Because what I love to hear is I love to hear a bird gobble. And then I wait and I hear a bird gobble again. And I listen, gobbles again. And I'm listening, and what am I listening for? I'm listening to see if the ladies are there. And I'm listening, no hens, and he's gobbling. And the more that I don't hear hens and the more he's gobbling, the more I'm excited because I know that my chance of calling that bird to me when he doesn't have any hens, I know my chances, in my opinion, are going way up. So I think what I've seen other people do and what I've done in years past and making a mistake is calling too soon before I've made my evaluation of what is going on and what kind of situation and how many birds am I dealing with. Your thoughts?
I am guilty as charged. I'm guilty. I like to call way too much. So, to be honest, for me, I think, a previous episode we talked about the different types of birds that we're working. If I roosted him the night before, if I scouted him out and I know that the bird, he only gobbles once or twice, and I think he's a mature bird and he's got hens. Okay, I know that going into the situation. Versus if I've, set up on those 2-year-olds that are just rocking. Okay, I kind of know that going into the situation. For me, I guess I evaluate when I start calling. Not so much based on what the birds are doing in the tree, but what I need them to do or what I need them to believe while they're up on the roost. And I say, and I mean it by this. There are some instances where because I scouted out properly and I knew exactly what trees those birds were in, and whether it's the limb, maybe the pine limbs, the limbs themselves are thick enough to where it allows me to sneak right in and get really close without them really seeing me, or it's pitch black and I can get in there without them seeing me. Regardless, whatever, I can get close, and more importantly, I can get close to where they want to pitch out or pitch out, and then I'm in their path on where they naturally want to go, versus I think I know where the birds are. I don't know where they want to pitch out. I don't know where they want to go. All I can do is get close and then hope that I can get them to come my way. Those two situations for me are different in the fact that if I know where the birds are roosted and I know that I am either, say, on the same little finger ridge that they are and I'm upslope of them, or I am maybe even across from the finger ridge that they're on, but I'm near a spot where they can pitch out and sail, and I know that they naturally want to come my way. If they want to pitch out in front of me or come my way on their own, absolutely, I'll just keep my mouth shut, and literally I won't say a peep until maybe those hens really start talking and it maybe sounds like maybe they're getting ready to pitch out, and I'll use the wing and I can fly down or scratch around and I'll make it sound like, hey, I'm the first bird that touched the ground and I'm already where you want to be, so just come. So I don't have to call that much. Versus if I'm just close, I know that I'm within that 100-yard range, but I don't know where they want to be and which way they want to go. Well, then sometimes I will start tree calling early so that bird, all the birds in that roost, whether it's just a couple gobblers or whether we're talking a whole flock, knows that there's a hen or two over on that or in that general area. And I usually will ramp up my calling sooner in an effort to convince them, you guys need to come I don't care where you guys normally want to go. You really ought to come my way now. So I will kind of judge my calling effort based on how confident I am in where those birds want to be. Make sense?
Yeah, totally. Let's take a quick break here.
Tired of relying on out-of-date numbers, spending too much on hunting consultants and seeing too little results? With Go Hunt Insider, the old way of doing things is over. With the introduction of Draw Odds and Filtering 2.0, you'll have access to the most accurate, up-to-date information in the industry. You can filter by state, species, trophy potential, weapon, specific days or months of the year, harvest success rate, male to female ratios, and much more. All of this leads to easily finding the best hunt for you. So what are you waiting for? Visit gohunt.com/insider and join the movement.
Use the J. Scott promo code when signing up and receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Since 1982, the Outdoorsman's in Phoenix has made it their goal to provide the very best customer service combined with the latest and greatest optics and accessories in the business. Outdoorsman's is the leading designer and manufacturer of high-quality tripods and mounting accessories for any hunter's optical needs. Go to outdoorsmans.com or call 1-800-291-8065 and use the J. Scott promo code to receive 10% off all Outdoorsman's packs and pack accessories.
I will say this, that if I have roosted the turkey the night before and it's a lone gobbler all by himself and I didn't hear any other turkeys with him, and let's say I've got him maybe isolated on a flat or somewhere where, I can see him up in the tree and I know he's alone, and let's say that I'm on public ground and I really want to kill the bird, maybe maybe I have limited time to hunt and I've got a single bird in a tree, which in my mind, if you're trying to fill the freezer, that is in my mind the best scenario.
Oh, yeah.
if I know that he's a single bird in the tree, there's two things. Well, there's several things. One is I'm hoping that he doesn't gobble a whole lot to attract attention. Number two is I'm going to try and watch with my binoculars as long as I'm not in so close that he can pick up, literally if I, grab my binos out of my bino case and just and go up with them. I'm always got my back behind a tree so that it's, breaking up my outline. But if I can watch the bird up there and kind of watch his behavior, what I like to do is I like to let him gobble and not call to him at all. And it's a real fine line, but I like to let him gobble and do his whole thing and get almost where he's going to fly down. Now, I could be different than a lot of people, but it's a fine line, and if I can get right before he's about to fly down, and I call to that bird, and he instant gobbles back, I call again, he answers back, then I'll just shut up. And 9 times, I'd say 9.5 times out of 10, if I can call to him 2 good times, right before he's going to fly down, he's going to fly right over to me. Now, other guys might know that he's the only turkey in the tree, and they know that if they start on him early, that he's probably going to gobble his brains out, and they're going to have an unbelievable time back and forth with this turkey, and he's still going to fly down and come directly over to you. I think public land hunters want to, in my opinion, call as little as possible to birds on a limb. And I have found that the kind of, in my opinion, you play harder to get and don't play your cards early. But I've also had them up on the limb where I haven't called, and then all of a sudden they pitch down early, and I'm like, oh crap!
Yes,
he just flew out of the tree, and I never called to him. And I've had situations where they fly out, and then I start calling, and they come or they don't come. But have you had those lone situations where you wait and wait and wait and wait, or do you typically always start in with them and just have a ball with them the whole time?
Actually, I would say it's kind of a mix of that. I always, because of that last scenario that you just outlined, where they pitch out early, sometimes that'll happen, and especially with some of these mountain birds. Now, I've had it happen with easterns in upstate New York, and I've literally, one of the first birds, vivid memory of killing my biggest, one of my first big toms, was that bird pitched out in upstate New York, dairy country, Finger Lakes region. We had vegetation called May-apples or trilliums. It's a flower that grows a certain way, and it creates a blanket across the forest floor. And the beautiful thing about it is it sits about 12 to 18 inches high off the ground, and then it leaves out. So you literally, half of your body is hidden underneath these flowers and stuff. It's awesome. Well, it was so early, it was so dark that literally the only thing that I could see coming through the timber was a bright white head. Literally, I could barely see his body. All I saw was this ghostly white head snaking through, coming towards me. He was all strutted out and fanned out, but he flew down ridiculously early. And I've seen that happen a couple times in the mountains too, because again, like we talked about in a previous episode, the fact that they like to pitch out on those the spots that light up earliest in the morning. Now we could say, okay, that's the east side of the east facing slope or whatever, but regardless, they're gonna pitch out to those areas where they're open and that light up first, because they want to be able to pitch out into a safe area because of mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, and everything else. And so there's been times where those birds have literally pitched out, and they have pitched out early. And again, going back to what I just said a minute ago, if I don't know where I am in proximity to where the birds want to be or want to go or want to fly out, I always want him to know right where I am and give him that idea to where if that bird says, oh, I want to pitch out, and he's not already committed on where he wants to be, maybe if I've got myself set up in a good spot, he'll want to pitch out and he'll want to come my way, whether that's early or late. So I usually do start off early and be one of the first quote-unquote hens to start tree yelping. Now, as soon as, I will always, if he gets up there, gobbles, boom, okay. If I haven't heard anything for a while, or I haven't heard any hens or whatever, I'll just scratch out just early, very early. I'll just scratch out a couple just soft little tree yelps, maybe a couple little clucks or purrs or whatever, and I will do it so soft to start that he might not even hear me. And then I will just slowly build that volume until I know he gobbled at me. Does that make sense? I'll go. So he just cuts me off. Boom. That tells me he heard me. He's like, you're over there. I heard you. Boom. Here I am. Okay. Now, from that point on, again, how much I call after that is going to be dependent on how confident of my setup I'm in. But if I'm close, I will agree with what you're talking about is if I know I'm where they want to be and I know that I'm close, or quite honestly, let me just spin it around. If I know I'm close, but I may not be where they want to be, calling too much too early can sometimes cause that bird to sit up on that roost and gobble his fool brains out.
Waiting for you.
Yes, because that's the whole point behind him gobbling. He's trying to call hens to him. And if he knows the flyout spot should be down below him, and I'm off to the side, and I start calling, and I'm making it sound like I am on the ground, then there's no reason in the world why me, if I was a real hen, I wouldn't make my way over and mill around in that spot. So he's going to gobble his brains out, wait for me. And the longer I sit up there in that thicket or that thick little spot or over on that ridge that doesn't make any sense, again, I didn't have coming in the morning or whatever, for some reason, I didn't know exactly where I needed to be, and I just did the best I could. Well, that may not be where the birds really want to be, and so he's going to gobble and be like, come on, baby, come down, I want to see you. Or, like you said, with public land birds, and we're talking about educated birds, one of my best public land birds took me 3 years to kill him because that sucker was so smart, he would not go to the hen. He would gobble his brains out, and if you got close, he would run to a designated strutting area. He would physically not move an inch towards you. He would only gobble, and no matter where he was on the landscape, if you started to get close, he would leave wherever he was and go to a certain spot on the map and go up there and strut and wait, and he would wait for you to show up. And if you didn't show up within about 10, 15 minutes, he'd go dead silent and leave, just flat walk away, and you aren't going to get on him again until the next day. I mean, this bird was epic. He was awesome. I finally killed him, but because I figured out what he was doing. Okay, so there are some birds that, especially those older toms, they know the whole point, biologically, the hen is supposed to go to the gobbler. So some of them will sit there and go, no, I'm gobbling, I'm strutting, you need to come to me. Whether that's on the roost or not. If he's on the roost strutting and carrying on, if there's a hen on the ground, it's not inconceivable for him to believe that hen should make her way over to him, and at some point, he should be able to see her milling around down below, and then he'll pitch out for her. So,
and I think too, if they know that they've heard you, and you don't make your way over to him, some people think that he's going to think, well, I'm jealous, I'm going to go see what she's doing.
Not necessarily.
I've found it where they are aware and they become wary because they're like, why didn't she come?
Yes.
Is there a coyote down there?
Yes.
What is down there that made her, which naturally she should do, but now she's not?
Yes.
In my mind, that's why lone bird situations, I try and call later, as late as I can, but I have had them leave the limb early, and then you're,
And that's where I love what you said, and I agree with that, is if you know, especially if you know you're in the direction that they want to be already, and especially if you know you're close, you don't necessarily have to call that much, and you don't have to call that early because they already want to be there. At this point, what you want to do is just kind of wait until it starts getting light enough to where you say, okay, I can see pretty well, and they should be getting ready. Somebody should be thinking about flying out here pretty quick. Okay, then I'm going to start to call because now it makes sense that you would be there. It's time to fly out. now you don't have as much of an incentive for that gobbler to stay on the roost and gobble. He can see it's fly out time. I'm just going to pitch out. She's already down there. I don't need her to wait to kind of gather underneath me. She's where they naturally are going to be anyway. She is already where we want to be. I'm just going to pitch out, join her, and get the rest of the group to come join us.
Right. One thing I want to talk about too is, we're going to talk about multiple birds, and if you hear hens in that same situation, but I want to back up just a little bit. So, what are you looking for when you go to put your back up against a tree in your early morning roost setup? I know what I'm looking for. I'm curious to hear the tree or whatever you're set up in front of. What determines that?
For me, well, go ahead. What did I?
It's that question alone is an hour-long topic.
Exactly. Well, let's settle in here. No, for me, I think, and I guess I'm pretty consistent, and you just made me think about this, which makes me happy that I'm consistent. It's very much similar to what I talk about with the elk stuff in the elk module, the doorway principle. I kind of really dictate where my setup is and what tree I choose, or it might even be just a clump of rocks, or it might be a thick a tree top that blew down or something. But most of the time, I am focused on my setup based on now, and I'm going to assume, but I don't have to assume. Doesn't matter. If I set my decoys out, I'm going to put my decoys out where the bird, when they pitch out, if they can't see him in the tree just from the sitting in the tree, I'm going to do it most of the time. I'll do it so where when they pitch out, then they can see the decoys. If I have decoys, I'm going to pick that spot. If I don't have decoys, most of the time I'm going to try to find a spot where it's likely that either A, they're going to pitch out, or B, it's a likely corridor that they're going to follow and they're going to move down. And then from there, okay, where is the first place that bird is likely going to be able to see me? Now, in the pitch black, sometimes that's a crapshoot. You're just stabbing at it in the dark. But if I know that there's maybe, let's just pick a random scenario. The birds are roosted on a little finger ridge off of the main ridge. I know that they're going to typically they might pitch out to the uphill side as close to their roost as possible. And I can get set up in that kind of orientation, then a lot of times I'm just going to pick the biggest tree, or maybe where you have a double tree, two trees growing out of the same spot, like a fork deal, or something that's going to give me the best cover to cover any approach that those birds take, whether it's, in front of me, left, right, uphill, downhill, whatever. I'm going to try to just cover my approach. But most of the time, I am focusing primarily on where are the birds going to come from, how are they going to move into my setup, and then I'm going to pick the tree or rocks or whatever structure that gives me the best ability to capitalize on that approach as possible. I'm going to really rely on my camouflage to try to do the best I can, but I do admit that I will try to find the biggest tree or the biggest clump of trees I can just to kind of help hide me a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'm with you as well. Sometimes you can't find that perfect ponderosa that's, say, wider than, if you were to give it a bear hug. That
yep.
I like to find the ones that you can't wrap your arms around. That's usually a pretty good judge, but sometimes you don't have the option. Sometimes you have, not many trees, or you've got, juniper trees, or you've got, down timber. You basically have to pick an area that you can get with something behind you to break up your outline,
mm-hmm.
okay? So that when it gets light and they look in your direction, they're not seeing you. Or you have to be with brush behind you that's kind of dense or thick, and then sometimes you can sit right out in the open, but you have to be pretty still with thick cover behind you.
Yeah.
And I loved downed logs, right where the tree snaps. Like if it's snaps about 3 foot off, and the big ponderosa tree, let's say, is leaning left on the ground, and there's like a big snag, you can usually sit anywhere along that log if there's like arms coming up and stuff, anything that will break up. And I've even sat behind a downed log because what that allows me to do is to have my calls and everything out in front of me, have my gun up on the log. Now, you have to be very, very careful that they don't pick you out. But if there's a downed log that has lots of vertical limbs going up and it's, a snaggly looking tree, that can be a great place to set up.
Yeah, and the big part for me, what you've said there is something of structure that helps break up your larger body outline, body characteristics. Because even though our modern camouflage can be extremely good, the problem is some of these habitats I've hunted in. I mean, the ponderosa pines that they're roosted in might be 12 inches in diameter or smaller. I mean, so they're smaller pines. They might be tall, but they're just a smaller diameter tree, or they're just where they want to pitch out. Any tree that you're going to set up nearby is a smaller diameter tree. The problem is, for those that are hunting, coming from the east going west, or even those of us that that live in the west and are hunting here, we got to remember, western turkeys deal with larger predators. We've got mountain lions. Number one, mountain lions and bears. I mean, a turkey's not going to pitch out and land next to it. Typically speaking, land next to a bear. It's not that a bear is going to be able to run down a turkey, but it's just not going to land next to a predator. Mountain lions are hellacious on turkeys. They kill turkeys left and right. And so if you think about our body, if we're sitting against a small tree, and even though we're camouflaged, we have this bulky, blobby thing sitting there. I've had turkeys negatively react to that and literally pick me out instantly because, wait a minute, that wasn't there yesterday. There's a blob there. That wasn't there yesterday. They don't know what I am, but they know that shape wasn't there yesterday. I'm not going over that direction. So if you can find, and I agree with you, I love where those big old honking pines have fallen down and you got the big limbs kind of sticking up. You can nestle right into them things and they'll never see you. They'll never see you.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about let's say that a bird is at your 12 o'clock straight in front of you, and let's say he's 100 yards out. If I'm a right-handed shooter and I've got myself with my back up against a ponderosa pine and I'm facing the bird, I want to talk about I'm a right-handed shooter. I want to turn my knees and turn everything so that if the bird's straight out in front of me at 12 o'clock, I'm a right-handed shooter. I want to actually aim my gun barrel about 45 degrees to the right of the bird. The reason that I want to do that is so that if the bird comes out of the limb and he heads to my right, so the direction that my gun barrel is pointed, but he goes to skirt me on the right, I have the ability to shoot out at that 45 and be able to shift my shoulders about probably another 10 degrees. If my gun barrel is pointed directly at the turkey at 12 o'clock and he swings to my right, I only have about that 12-degree shift in my body being a right-handed shooter. So I always, and this also applies to later morning setups, anytime a bird's coming in as a right-handed shooter, I want to have my gun barrel pointed at a 45. So if the bird is at 3 o'clock, I want to almost have my barrel pointed over at 4 or 5 o'clock, so that if he does try and skirt to my right, I do have a little bit of wiggle room. And then conversely, with that gun barrel, let's go back to the 12 o'clock position straight out in front of me. If I'm aimed over here at 3 o'clock, if he swings anywhere on the left, as a right-handed shooter, I can swing all the way back across my body and almost behind me, and I've just widened my quote-unquote range of fire. And I think that's something that people, they get themselves all twisted up, because if a bird's gobbling out in front of you, they aim the gun barrel at where that position is. I think it's okay to aim your barrel at the bird, but I think you need to have your shoulders and your body and your legs positioned kind of at the 45. And it's okay as the bird's gobbling or whatever to kind of have your barrel always pointed in the direction you hear the gobble, but you want your body positioned as a right-handed shooter 45 to the left, and as a left-handed shooter you would want to be aimed and have your body angled 45 to the left. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and it's one of the things I think, two things. One, every single year with a new hunter, I'm always teaching, because I think you're right. Instinctively, instinct. You naturally want, people sit up and say, again, birds at 12 o'clock, right straight in front of you. They sit down and they face that bird. I always tell people exactly what you just said, 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, right-handed versus left-handed. Again, point your barrel there, that's fine, but have your body positioned so you can swing and move easier. And I think, quite honestly, for new hunters, that if you've ever set up, you've started calling birds, the birds have responded, they've started to come in, and then all of a sudden they get spooked, their heads go up, and they kind of get moved, they walk away. I will bet that if you sit back and really look at it, 9 times out of 10, it very well may have been simply because of how you were positioned. Because even let's say, again, let's use that scenario, 12 o'clock, it's straight in front of you, and I sit down with my back against a tree, and my gun, or my knees are pointed, or my legs are pointed toward that, in front of me, towards that bird. I'm sorry. Even if that bird makes a straight line from him to me, and I'm a right-hand shooter, you think about it, trying to point your gun straight down your legs, in that direction, you're contorted. You're not natural, and you're gonna have to, if that bird comes in and you want to put a bead on him, your natural shoulders and chest are gonna move. And I think that little bit of movement is what sets them off, and then they hang up, they stay out there, and then they skirt you, and then, there we go, it didn't work. Whereas, if you do what Jay said, and what I talk about all the time, is just set it up to where your knees are off at an angle. And like I said, I talk about 10 and 2. So if you're a right-handed shooter, I want the bird at my 10 o'clock. I'm facing, if the direction I'm facing is 12 o'clock, I want that bird at 10 o'clock. I can put my barrel on that bird at 10 o'clock very, very comfortably without moving my shoulders. And if Jay, you nailed it. If he swings to my right, I can swing easily. If he swings to my left, he can go all the way around me, and I can swing on him without hardly having to move or contort myself very, very much. So, no, I think it's one of the most important new hunters, well, hunters in general. I think it's one of the most important things to consider when setting up. Now, for those people that are listening that bow hunt and want to bow hunt, and I don't care if you're bow hunting and if you're in your blind, or if you're bow hunting just with your butt sitting against a tree. This time, at that point, I say you want to set up with that bird at your 9 o'clock.
So even further.
You want that bird, you want your shoulders, the line of your shoulder from left shoulder to right shoulder, or right shoulder to left shoulder, the line of your shoulders pointing in the direction of that bird. Because if I'm a right-handed archery shooter, which I am, I extend my bow arm out. If we're at the range, our natural alignment, our chest is going to be essentially parallel, or I guess it depends on what perpendicular. Our chest is going to be pointing towards, or the flat part. What am I trying to say? The flat part of our chest. We're turned at an angle to the target. We're not facing the target. Make sense? Same thing with birds. If the turkey comes in, all I want to have to do is just pull that bow back and not have to move. But if he swings to my right in front of me, I can move and I can swing. If he swings to my left, I can move and I can swing. But if I point my body at that bird, there's no way I'm going to draw that bow back and be able to shoot down my legs without having to majorly contort my body. And then I'm going to get myself out of position of, I'm not going to be in good shooting form. I'm not going to have a good sight picture. I guarantee you're going to miss that bird or just wound it and not going to make a good shot. So if it's shotgun, 10 or 2. If it's a bow hunter, 9 or 3, depending on which side you're on.
Good stuff. Let's go back to the scenario of, we've talked about the single bird gobbler in a tree. Let's talk about you're going in and you know that you have a gobbler and hens in the tree. You're in there in the morning. You're close. The first thing that starts up is hen talk, tree calling. In my opinion, you have to join in and be part of the flock right away. If you wait too late, you will be somewhat kind of like the outcast, and I've seen them just gather up and fly the other way. In my mind, when you hear other hens where a lot of guys are like, man, I don't sound as good as that hen, and it makes them reluctant, I think you have to be the opposite. I think you have to get in there and agitate those hens. I think you have to mimic the hen and maybe pick one specific hen out and just, mimic her, and, quite a bit more calling when you're hearing hens. The just call a couple times and sit back and see what happens, it never works. I shouldn't say never. Very rarely works. You have to be the aggressor. Curious your thoughts.
I will agree with that. I will agree with that with this one caveat. Unless you know that your butt or your decoys are literally sitting in the spot where they naturally want to fly out.
Correct.
If you know that you're already, and you don't even have, in this situation, sometimes you don't even need, if you know where they fly out and you've watched and they fly out every time the same spot, sometimes you don't even need a decoy. Just sit your butt down there and just sluice them. Let them fly out, let them do their natural thing, and when that tom hits the ground and he's in range, smoke him. So if that's the case, I won't say a word. You don't have to. Just let them believe that there's nothing different from this morning versus all the other mornings that they've done, whatever they've done every other morning previous. Okay? So that's the only time I will say no. However,
Chris, before you get to that, let's take a quick break.
Utah Hydrographics is in the water transfer printing service, and they are open to whatever you can dream up. Choose from a wide range of camo patterns, designs, and colors. Whether it's guns, bows, tools, rifle stocks, vehicles, steering wheels, fenders, dashboards, paint guns, fishing rods, cups, tripods, watches, knife grips, helmets for a local sports team or for your motorcycle, picture frames, mailbox, animal skulls, you name it, they can probably do it. Utah Hydrographics loves taking things that are general looking and turns them into something that looks fantastic and eye-popping. Give them a call and see what they can do for you and receive up to a 10% discount by using the JScott16 promo code. Visit them at utahhydrographics.com or on Instagram at Utah Hydrographics. Whether you are interested in elk, deer, antelope, bighorn sheep, or moose, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines will bring the adventure to your mailbox. These publications feature articles on the finest hunting gear, tips and tactics from experienced hunters, field judging trophies, glassing techniques, calling strategies, and much more. To become a more knowledgeable and skilled hunter, subscribe today. Go to westernhunter.net/JScott and enter your email address for a chance to win a $1,500 credit towards any Swarovski product.
Okay, go ahead. However,
if I know that, if I don't know where the birds want to be, and I'm not confident at the directions they're going to fly out, and or I know they just can't see my decoys or whatever, then absolutely, I agree. Most cases, you're better off engaging that dominant. You'll hear those hens start going. You really need to start engaging, and some people talk about challenging. Some people talk about threatening, whatever. You need to sound like a hen who's in control. Here's the tidbit I will say. If you're going to do that, in my experience, and on the turkey module, I talk about two different styles of hen yelps. And if you listen, and I've got some video footage on there where you can hear the different vocalizations, the two different hen yelp vocalizations, all right? Hens will yelp, but they can do a yelp in one of two different ways. One, higher-pitched, fast-paced yelping. Okay? Or you will hear those lower-pitched, oftentimes very raspy, and what I call low and slow. Ow, 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 ow. You know, just real raspy and just slower cadence. Oftentimes, those dominant older hens that are dominant and in controlling the groups are the ones doing that low and slow. Ow, 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 ow. Just real raspy. Even though the high-pitched, fast-paced yelps will get those gobblers fired up and gobbling, it's not necessarily the hens that they are listening to and following the orders of. Same thing with the rest of the hens. You'll hear hens up there just going off. But it's the ones that are oftentimes doing that low and slow that are actually dictating where that flock goes. So if I know that I have to challenge some hens or I need to engage those hens and I got to try to convince them to come my way, I am going to choose a mouth call, or I'm going to use my box call. I'm going to use a call that is raspy, and I'm going to use that kind of low and slow cadence, and I'm going to try to sound like a boss hen, an older age class hen that is trying to take charge of that group. A lot of times, that's when you'll hear the actual boss hen, she'll kick in. She will absolutely kick in and just stomp your butt. She's, cutting and just, just going nuts, trying to say, no, who the heck are you? You're not the one. If she does that, just keep stepping it up. Just pour the coals to it. Just crank that fire. Because you get her ticked off, she pitches out and comes over to see what the heck is going on and who you are, the entire flock is coming your way. So even though you're excited, if you your natural tendency is to be that excited, high-pitched, fast-paced calling, yes, it might get him gobbling. It might get him fired up. And yes, if he pitches out first or pitches out earlier than everybody else, or see you've got a dominant bird and then a couple subordinate toms in that mix, yes, that can pull one of those subordinate toms over. Yes, it can work. I'll tell you, my better success has been that low and slow, very, very raspy, and just try to get the whole group to come.
Chris, I want to play a little clip here for you. I'm going to see if it works and have you listen to this.
perfect high-pitched, fast-paced yelping.
And then you heard right at the end where she just flew down and came right, she flew right to me. Normally I'm not that, I'm not normally that in your face with the hens, but she was real mouthy. She was the only one that I could see, and he was with her. And I knew that I had to get all over her. So with my box call, I just stayed after her, and that hen flew right down and flew right to me, in which he then flew right off and flew right to her, and she was already right in front of my face, and my hunter was able to shoot her. But I think that gives a good example of, being mouthy back and kind of mimicking, exactly what she was saying.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about just, if you don't know what you're saying, if you're not sure what vocalizations to make, do what they do. Basically, because what you're essentially doing at that point is if she gets excited, you're getting excited. If she gets more excited, you're even more excited. And so it's basically this standoff. You're basically at the point where someone has to give. And if you're not, one of two things is going to happen. She's either going to come over and take a look and see what that's going on, or she goes, all right, I've given you enough of a chance. We're going this way. And they just turn and they just go off and they go their own separate way. The beautiful thing, I'm glad you played that, because the beautiful thing about that is, even if my setup in the morning doesn't work and they go a different direction, especially if we're talking about, most mountain states, western states, you're talking about starting your season middle of April, not September. Middle of April. In some places, you're kind of catching that, you're catching the behavioral cycle where the birds are kind of starting to get already flocked up or are henned up. And literally by the end of April, beginning of May, some of those hens are starting to go off and nest. And so even though that bird may be with hens in the morning, does not necessarily mean he's going to be with the hens later in the morning or even in the afternoon. A lot of times, if those birds hear hens that were near the roost at first light, but those hens never, showed up and kind of got married up with their flock and moved off with them, those times will circle right back around and kind of try, once they're on their own, they'll circle back around and try to pick those guys, try to find those hens again and try to pick them up. So if you're dealing with a gobbler with hens, a lot of times you're stuck with engaging those hens and trying to get the hens to come to you or get the flock to come to you. But don't be discouraged if they don't, because those gobblers will sometimes come back and swing back around and check it out.
And that's one question I would ask you. You've got a morning setup. You've got good interaction with birds. They fly down. They don't necessarily come to you. They may skirt you. They gobble. They're not spooked. They just didn't come to you. You heard some other distant birds gobbling. You had, let's say a couple different gobblers in your setup and 10, 12, 15 hens. And other birds heard you and were gobbling in the distance to you calling. How long do you sit right there and wait and continue to call? Or how long does it take you to move either on one of those other birds that you hear gobbling or the main flock that didn't come your way?
Oh, I think there's a couple things in there that go into my decision-making process. Number one, am I just running and gunning? If I'm with a shotgun, well, do I have a blind or not? A lot of times, if I'm going to be hunting a blind, like we had talked about in the earlier episode about that one New Mexico turkey hunt that I did, my wife and I were sitting in a blind, and so I hiked that blind in, set it up, and I knew I was in a good spot. And so even though the first bird came in and I missed, there were other gobblers around, and I knew I was in a good movement corridor, and so we just sat there and waited, and we were just kind of dinking around, and sure enough, another bird came in and whack. So if I know that I'm kind of stationary with a blind or whatever, I'll sit and I will just let the setup work, and I will let their natural behavior across that landscape just come to play. However, or even if I'm not in a blind, if I know, okay, the flock, the gobbler that's in the tree this morning didn't respond to me, but I know there's other birds nearby, and where I'm set on this ridge makes sense that other turkeys are going to be wandering up and down the ridge or back and forth up and down the ridge or whatever. Shoot, I might just sit there and wait and not get up too soon, because a lot of times I've spooked birds by getting up too soon. That's the problem. You want to get up and run and gun and chase after them, and all of a sudden you stand up and boom, there were some birds working down the ridge line. So I will let it literally sit and wait. If there's been other birds nearby that I know of, I might sit there for several hours. However, if in some of these places we hunt, you might have one gobbler here, and literally the only other group of turkeys you know of are, a quarter mile, half mile, or, half mile away. These birds flew down. They went the other way. There's no other birds around me that I know of. All right, I'm going to pick up. I'm going to move. I'm going to go, and I'm going to try to close the distance on that other group, and then set up and try them. So it depends on how much movement I really think there's going to be in the area.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think, I've done both too, where I stand up too early, and that flock that I was originally working, they've only moved off 50 yards. I can't hear them. They're quiet. I thought they're gone, but literally they're just over there strutting and, being turkeys, and I stand up and spook the whole flock. And I think it's hard to know what the right thing to do is, but I would always say give it maybe a little more time than you thought, and then maybe come back, and maybe that's a good spot for you to be sitting that afternoon and try and have your decoys and such, and be ready for maybe those birds to cross back by and hopefully roost in that same area.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The other thing to keep in mind is, you've said it already a couple times, even in previous episodes, but pay attention to how many hens he's got. If he's got like 8 to 10, 12 hens, he's got a pile of hens. He's gonna be busy. And most likely it doesn't matter if we're talking earlier or even toward later on the season, he's got a bunch of hens. He's probably going to be stuck with those hens all day, especially early season. I mean, he's going to be with those hens. But if you're listening and literally they fly out, or you're scouting or whatever, or you see tracks in the snow or whatever, and you go, man, it's one gobbler with 2 hens. Man, he may not be with both those hens for very long. He might go through them first thing in the morning, and literally, yeah, he flew down. He went with them. But literally in the next 30 to 45 minutes, he's done breeding them. He might mill around with them a little bit, but if they just move off a short distance and are ignoring him, he might literally swing right back around and come in by himself or come in silent within an hour of daybreak. So a lot of times...
And or those other birds that you heard in the distance, a lot of times they will work their way just because they want to... They're a subordinate bird that's, a single, and they may not come in gobbling. They may come in silent, but good chance that if you just stayed put and called every once in a while, that they would come in silent, and the next thing you know, right out in your vision, out in your decoy spread, you'd have a gobbler slinking his way in, coming to check things out.
Yep, and there's a lot of times where me and my, if it was a buddy of mine or whatever, I joke all the time, a buddy of mine, Keith, it was just we worked these birds in the morning. They didn't work. It didn't happen. Okay, we kind of got up and moved a little bit, but we were like, you know what? We don't know where the heck we need to be. And it's too thick in some of these areas for us to know what the heck's going on. We know the birds are using this area. We're just going to go back and let's just sit and just wait and see. Sure enough, my buddy Keith is sitting there eating peanut butter, out of an MRE. He's eating the peanut butter and crackers, and he's got a mouthful of crackers just crunching away, and all of a sudden this gobbler cuts loose like 80 yards away from us. He's got no clue. All he can hear in his ears is just crunching crackers and peanut butter. I'm yelling at him to get it set up. But, yeah, I mean, these birds, give it some time. Have some patience. Remember, they don't have a work schedule. They don't have soccer practice. They don't have to, they don't have birthday parties. They're there all day. They have no place to be, so they're not in a hurry. So if you're going to be out there and hunt, if you know you're in a good spot, you know they heard you off the roost, they just went on and they walked off, especially if you know that bird only has a couple hens, or if you know other birds in the area, man, just sit your butt tight. And, man, there's sometimes I'll just sit there until 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, not moving, just waiting. Because a lot of times they'll come sneaking in and just taking their time with, once they got done with the hens that they were after, they filled their crop, they kind of filled their stomach a little bit. Now they're off on explore mode, and they're going to go right to where they heard those birds in the morning.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about early morning roost situation decoy setups. I think it's a good time to bring decoys in, specifically talking about early morning roost setups. And I think you made a good point earlier with the decoys. I am going to try and set the decoys. If I have my choice, I want the decoys to be able to be seen from the tree. So if I'm hunting on public ground, I typically don't like to use a full strutting decoy turkey just from a safety perspective. I do hunt a lot of private ground as well. On private ground, I am going to advocate using a full strutting decoy. And I'm basically going to set up the Jake, I'm going to set up some hens, and I'm going to set up, I tend to take the whole flotilla out there and take the whole flock with me. And I want to set that turkey full strutting fan, I want the fan facing right at the gobbler, and I want the decoy's head facing kind of in my direction. And
back up. Say that again.
I want the fan facing the turkey.
Okay, the back of the
butt.
Okay,
the butt of the fan.
Okay.
His butt facing. I want the decoy butt facing the turkey in the tree or where I think the turkey can see, and I want the head of the decoy facing in my direction. Maybe not right at me, but in my direction. But I definitely think a key to decoys in the morning is either, like you said, where they can see it from the tree or they can see it from when they hit the ground, they look over and see the decoys. Thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yep. If I think I've got some really, really call-shy birds or really kind of, again, if you know that the flock of birds that you're hunting is a very isolated group and they're the only birds in that region, that they're only birds in that area, typically speaking, I will not have those decoys out where they can see them when they pitch out. I will try to set them off to the side to where when the birds pitch out, they hit the ground, then they can see the birds there. I don't want them sitting there stewing on it going, wait a minute, how? Sometimes I've been in situations where the birds see a decoy or they hear me calling and they know that there are no other turkeys around. They get all weirded out and spooked and they just kind of move off. However, there's other times where, if I know that I can get those decoys out there in the open where they're going to pitch out and I'm not going to bust them, I'm going to set those babies exactly like what you just talked about. My priority, again, I think you made a good distinguishing caveat to that, is public versus private. If you know you're in a situation where you are the only person that's going to be in there, or your hunting party's the only people that are going to be in there, okay, then you have a little bit more flexibility. I've always been a firm believer. There's many schools of thoughts, but the two main schools are, put the head of the decoy facing the turkey because the turkey wants to come in and fight the decoy, or like what Jay just said, and I agree with you, and this is after a lot of testing. I will always have that decoy's tail fan generally facing his butt, his rear end, facing towards the decoy. And a lot of times in my setup, I'll actually set it at
You mean towards the bird?
Towards the bird. I'll have it set up as an angle to where the actual live turkey, when he's looking at the decoy, sees mostly the butt of the fan, the back part of the fan, maybe a little bit of the side of the body, and maybe catch a little bit of his bright red, white, and blue head. But I want the butt of his fan, or the butt of the decoy fan, facing more towards the bird. Because even if you have a very, very aggressive tom, and he wants to come in and just bowl that thing over. 99.9% of the time, he's going to sneak in from behind the fan and of the decoy and kick it over. If you have a very timid tom that is more of a lover than a fighter and wants to engage that decoy, but he's a little cautious, he's going to come in from behind that fan. So if you set your decoy up to allow them to do that, it doesn't matter what behavioral disposition that turkey that you're calling has, you've set it up to where that he feels comfortable engaging that decoy. Now, if you're on public ground, however, and you are set up to where another hunter could come into your position from any certain direction without maybe you seeing them, then in my opinion, safety trumps strategy on your decoy setup if you're using a full strutter. And I will say point your decoy head straight at you, okay? Because if a hunter comes into your setup from anywhere out in front, anywhere from the sides of you out in front of you, if they come into your setup from in front of you, the only sight picture that they will have is of the turkey's butt, your decoy butt in the fan, okay? So they don't have a good clear headshot, which means hopefully they're not taking body shots. Hopefully they're not going to shoot in your direction. If they come in to your left or right, they can see the head, and if they choose to take a shot at your decoy, hopefully, it's not a great situation, but hopefully all that shot will pass harmlessly in front of you by you. Whereas, if they come in from behind you and they have a full-on frontal shot of that turkey decoy, if you have been able to set yourself up to where you have some sort of structure behind you, a big tree behind you, rocks or whatever, hopefully if they do take a shot, you're safe. But using a full strut decoy on public ground when you know you have a lot of other public land hunters out there can be, you just got to be very, very careful with it. And that's why I said just put the decoy so it faces you, so it really limits. The only time that you can get yourself in trouble is if someone's taking body shots or someone sneaks in behind you that you're unaware of.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the safest way to handle that. And I will say that one of the reasons why I have the decoys always facing in my direction too is that it tells the other turkey, the live turkeys, that if I was that they're facing my direction and that the decoys look like real birds, and if there was any alarm or any problems in my direction where I'm sitting, these turkeys would already know it. So it gives the bird that's coming, say, from 12 o'clock the ability to know that these birds are already facing me. The decoys are facing me. So there's no problem in my direction, which then allows usually the bird to come in with more confidence that there is no problem out in front of these turkeys. Whereas behind these turkeys, that bird doesn't know as much, but I guess, does it make sense that I want those decoys facing me so that towards my direction is no problem, which makes them come even closer to me, the guy with the shotgun?
I can generally agree with that, but as your friend, I will play devil's advocate.
I like it.
If the turkeys were actually relaxed and they thought that the entire situation was safe, they'd be scattered feeding all sorts of different directions. They'd be relaxed to feed left of you, right of you, front of you, back of you, away from you. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
And you'll see turkeys. I mean, you'll see the gobblers out there when they're relaxed. They're kind of in the middle of the show, or they're off to the side, and they're turning at 360 degrees. They're all over the place. And same thing with the hens. They're picking, moving here, moving here. So, I mean, I agree with you. I don't have a problem with the way, me and you, if you and I were setting up like that, I wouldn't my wife will disagree with this. I would, my OCD wouldn't kick in strongly to where I'd want to reset your decoys. It absolutely makes sense. But, for me, I don't worry about that. For me, all things being equal, if I'm not doing all my thing on private ground, or I'm in an area where I know that I'm pretty much the only person in there, I will put that strutter. If I'm using a strutter decoy, I will put the strutter decoy where I want to take the shot, at the sweet spot as far as my effective range of where I want to take the shot and how far I want the shot to be, and I will position that strutter decoy to make sure that the tail is allowing that gobbler to sucker in behind it if it wants to, and then I just use my hen decoys as filler. And I just usually will scatter them around, and I'll point them different directions, and just kind of use it as a filler situation. So,
okay, so birds at 12 o'clock. You've got your strutter in the ideal situation where you can shoot. Do you put any hens between the strutting decoy and the turkey, or are all the subsequent hens from the same distance towards you? And that's how I set it up. The strutter will be the furthest away from me. And then I'll set a Jake off to the left, a couple hens positioned but closer to me. Usually my strutter is the furthest thing away from me, but I like to set my decoys no further than, I want the decoys to be no further than 30 yards from me.
Yeah, and yes, I don't disagree with that at all. I just use it as, you and I'm assuming you're using a 12 gauge. I'm assuming you're using kick pow shells. I'm assuming that you're using a good turkey choke. So you've got good range out to 40 plus yards, but your sweet spot is 30. Absolutely. If folks that are listening to this, if you're taking kids out and they're using a 20 gauge, or you're using,
bring them in.
Yeah,
Bring them in.
Wherever the sweet spot of your pattern is, that's where I'm going to set that decoy. Okay. So that way I want to have, if that gobbler comes in and engages that decoy, I want the best scenario possible. But if he hangs out another 10, 15 yards beyond it, I still want to be able to smack him as well. So, that's it. For as far as the hens go, generally speaking, yes. Whatever direction the gobbler's coming from, most of the time I want him to engage in a, I guess, and I don't know if you want to talk about the whipping boy setup, but anyway, he's going to engage my gobbler or my strut or my Jake decoy first, and then the hens are beyond that. They're either lateral to that point or they're beyond that. So if your scenario, the gobbler's at 12 o'clock straight in front of me, then if he comes in, he's going to engage a Jake decoy or a strut decoy first, and then the hens are either going to be to his left or right, or they're going to be closer to me. If the gobbler is off to, say, my 9 o'clock, straight to my left, my Jake decoy or strutter decoy is going to be right where I want to take the shot, and then I might have a hen decoy a little bit further. I might have a hen decoy closer to me, but the rest of my hen decoys will be to my right, so that way he engages the strutter or the Jake first, and then he has to move through in order to engage those hens.
Good stuff. Well, buddy, we've covered a lot of ground here on early morning roost setups. On our next episode, we're going to cover mid-morning, midday, and late afternoon, evening setups. We'll be talking about.
We covered like one section. We're going to end up having like an 8-part series. This is awesome.
I appreciate you spending time with us. I want to give you a chance to let the listeners know where they can find you, so do that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. All of my stuff, you can get just look up Roe Hunting Resources. That's ROE Hunting Resources. We've got the main website, which is it's an educational-based website. A lot of videos on there, and there's different subscription modules. But you can, if you do want to subscribe and want to learn some more about this type of stuff, if you go in and get a subscription in the promo code portion, always remember you can type in J Scott Podcast and it takes 20% off of that subscription price. But we've also got our YouTube channel and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. You can find me anywhere and just look up Roe Hunting resources, and it'll get you hooked up.
Thank you, buddy, so much. I look forward to
All right, brother.
The next couple episodes, and I appreciate you being on with us.
Absolutely. No, it's always fun.
Guys, I want to thank you for listening to Part 4, Episode 133 on early morning setups. And next we're going to cover in Episode 134, Part 5, we're going to cover mid-morning, kind of midday setups on turkeys. I hope you guys are getting a lot out of this series, and I want to thank Chris Rowe for coming on with us. I also want to thank our sponsors of this podcast, the title sponsor, GoHunt.com Insider, Utah Hydrographics, Outdoorsman's Phone Scope, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazines, and Wilderness Athlete. Be sure to use the promo codes when you contact these companies and take advantage of the J. Scott Outdoors or just the J. Scott promo code, and make sure you receive the discounts. So, guys, I want to thank you for supporting this podcast. Remind you that you can follow our adventures on our YouTube channel at J. Scott Outdoors on YouTube. You can follow along on Instagram at J. Scott Outdoors and at Dar Colburn, on our website, J. Scott Outdoors, and on our Facebook page. And I appreciate all the emails that I get from the listeners. If you have any questions that have come up from this series of episodes, please email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And until next time, guys, God bless.